November 13th, 1984, Exeter, New Hampshire. An 8-year-old girl leaves her home for school, a walk of less than 3 blocks. She waves goodbye to her mother, straps on her backpack, and disappears into the crisp autumn morning. She never makes it to class. No screams, no struggle, no witnesses. Just silence. For nearly 40 years, no one has seen her again. No body, no answers. Only questions that haunt a town to this very day. This is the chilling mystery of Tammy Belanger, the little girl who vanished in broad daylight. November 1984. Exeter, New Hampshire. A small New England town where everyone knew each other, where children rode bikes down tree-lined streets, and where the greatest worry parents had was that their kids might come home late for dinner. In the middle of this safe, postcard-perfect community lived the Belanger family and their bright, lively daughter, Tammy Lynn Belanger. Tammy was only 8 years old, 3rd grade. Full of energy, curious about the world. She had soft brown hair that framed her round face, a shy but mischievous smile, and big brown eyes that seemed to carry more innocence than the world around her deserved. Her teachers adored her. She was bright, kind, always willing to help her classmates. Friends remembered her as the kind of girl who loved playing outside, laughing loudly, and telling little stories that made everyone smile. She loved her dog, loved reading books, and adored school activities. Her family, she was the heart of the home. Tammy lived only a short walk from her elementary school. Less than half a mile. 3 blocks. It was a walk she had taken countless times before. Past familiar houses, past neighbors who waved, past streets everyone in Exeter considered safe. Her parents had no reason to think anything bad could ever happen on that short walk. No reason to doubt that their daughter would leave home in the morning and return that afternoon with stories from her day. Exeter wasn't a dangerous city. It wasn't New York or Boston. It was the kind of place where bad things weren't supposed to happen. But evil doesn't always need dark alleys or midnight shadows. Sometimes it hides in daylight. Tammy's parents, Diane and Norman, were devoted and protective. They loved their daughter deeply. They taught her responsibility, kindness, and to trust her community. They gave her freedom to walk to school because they believed, like every parent in town, that Exeter was safe. The Belangers were not wealthy, not famous. They were ordinary working-class people. But Tammy made their home extraordinary. Her laughter filled the walls. Her drawings decorated the fridge. And her presence gave the family a sense of completeness. The early 1980s were a different time. Parents didn't yet live in constant fear. Children walked to school in groups, sometimes even alone, without the paranoia of modern times. It was the era before the milk cartons with missing kids' faces, before Adam Walsh's abduction in Florida reshaped America's sense of safety. Back then, parents still believed their children were safe in their own neighborhoods. That's what made what happened to Tammy so unthinkable. Tammy's teachers said she loved learning. She wanted to be a writer someday, inspired by the books she carried in her backpack. She loved animals so much she once told her mother she wanted to open a shelter when she grew up, but mostly she was just a child, a little girl with scraped knees, laughter that echoed through the streets, and the unshakable trust that the world around her was safe. On the night before November 13th, Tammy went to bed like any other child. She packed her school bag, set aside her books, and laid out her clothes for the next day. Her parents tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and told her good night. There was nothing unusual, no fear, no warning. Just the quiet peace of a family, drifting to sleep in a safe town. But when the sun rose the next morning, the world shifted, because that short, 3-block walk Tammy took every day would become the path that swallowed her whole. In 1984, Exeter, New Hampshire was the kind of town people dreamed of raising children in, a small New England community with white church steeples, tree-lined streets, and neighbors who waved when they passed each other on sidewalks. The crime rate was low. The people were close-knit. Families left doors unlocked, and kids rode their bikes across town until the sun dipped behind the rooftops. It was the kind of place where parents said, "Nothing bad ever happens here." Exeter was proud of its history. Old colonial homes stood beside new schools. The rhythm of life was steady. Children walking to school in the mornings, shopkeepers opening their businesses, families gathering for dinner in the evenings. Parents worked in nearby mills, offices, and shops. Kids played ball in yards or rode down Main Street with ice cream cones. It was a town rooted in tradition, safe, ordinary, predictable. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. For Exeter children, walking to school wasn't just normal. It was a rite of passage. By the 3rd grade, kids were expected to make the short walk on their own or with friends. It built independence, responsibility. Parents believed that on these quiet suburban streets, nothing could go wrong. Tammy's route was only a few blocks. She passed homes of people who knew her by name, who had seen her grow up. It was routine. It was safe. But on November 13, 1984, it became the walk she never returned from. The truth is, small towns carry their own dangers, ones hidden beneath their charm. In 1984, across America, parents were beginning to realize that safety was an illusion. That very year, newspapers were filled with reports of missing children. Adam Walsh's murder just 3 years earlier had already begun reshaping the national consciousness. And yet, towns like Exeter still believed they were immune, until Tammy vanished. On November 12th, the town of Exeter was quiet, peaceful. Leaves blew across the sidewalks. Families prepared for the coming winter. Children packed backpacks for school. No one suspected that the very next morning, tragedy would strike and Exeter's illusion of safety would be shattered forever. For Tammy, walking to school was just another day. For her parents, letting her walk those 3 blocks was an act of trust in their town. But what no one realized was that evil can wait in the most ordinary places. Evil doesn't need shadows or dark alleys. Sometimes it hides in sunshine. And on that bright November morning in Exeter, evil struck. The sun had just begun to rise over Exeter, painting the rooftops in a pale autumn glow. The air was crisp, carrying the bite of New England's coming winter. For the Belanger household, it was just another school day. Tammy woke up early, as she always did. She dressed herself carefully, packed her school bag with books and pencils, and tucked her favorite reading materials inside. Her parents remember her as being in a cheerful mood that morning, full of the energy only an 8-year-old could carry. Her mother gave her a quick breakfast before reminding her to head out on time. Tammy slipped her school bag over her shoulder, pulled on her jacket, and set out the front door for the short walk to Lincoln Street School. It was a walk she had made countless times before. From the Belanger home, it was less than half a mile. To the school, just a few quiet blocks, past tidy homes and familiar neighbors. Tammy followed her normal path, down Court Street, across Main, toward Lincoln Street. It should have taken her no more than 5 minutes. But somewhere on that short stretch of road, she simply vanished. 8 a.m. Tammy leaves home for school. 8:05 a.m. A neighbor later recalls seeing her walking in the direction of school. Nothing seemed unusual. 8:10 a.m. Teachers begin to gather their students inside classrooms. But Tammy never arrives. 8:30 a.m. Attendance is taken. Her name is called, but she's absent. Teachers assume she's late or sick. 9 a.m. By now, no word from Tammy or her parents. Concern begins to grow. When school called home, Tammy's mother, Diane, was immediately alarmed. Tammy had left on time. She should have been at school within minutes. Her parents quickly searched the house, then the neighborhood. There was no sign of her. Her school books were gone. Her jacket was missing, proof that she had indeed left for school. But the trail ended there. A few neighbors recalled seeing her along the street, walking as usual, carrying her bag. But no one saw her reach the school. And no one saw what happened in between. It was as if, in the span of 5 minutes, Tammy had been swallowed by thin air. By mid-morning, the Belanger family reported her missing to Exeter police. At first, officers assumed she may have skipped school or wandered off, but her parents knew better. Tammy wasn't the type to run away. She was responsible, obedient, and afraid of breaking rules. Police began canvassing the area, asking neighbors if they had seen anything unusual. Most said no. A few reported strange cars parked nearby in the days before, but nothing concrete emerged. The haunting fact about Tammy's disappearance was its simplicity. No struggle was heard. No screams were reported. No books or belongings were dropped. She walked out the door and was never seen again. By afternoon, the news had spread through Exeter like wildfire. Parents pulled their children closer. Teachers tried to calm anxious classrooms. Police and volunteers began sweeping the streets, backyards, and wooded areas, but there was nothing. Tammy had vanished in broad daylight, in the middle of a safe, small town. And for the Belanger family, an ordinary Tuesday morning had transformed into the beginning of a nightmare that would never end. When a child goes missing, every second matters. And in Tammy Belanger's case, the first 48 hours would become a race against time. A race that Exeter would never forget. By late morning, on November 13, 1984, police had officially classified Tammy as a missing child. This wasn't a runaway. This wasn't a misunderstanding. An 8-year-old had vanished from the middle of town. Officers began knocking on doors, stopping cars, questioning neighbors. Word spread quickly, and panic followed just behind it. Parents rushed to pick up their children from school. Neighbors locked doors that had been open for years. The town's illusion of safety was collapsing hour by hour. Exeter police, joined by state troopers, launched a massive search. Volunteers formed lines, combing through fields and wooded areas. Police dogs sniffed along Tammy's route. Officers searched nearby rivers and abandoned buildings. Helicopters buzzed overhead, scanning the ground below. But Tammy was nowhere. Not a single footprint, not a piece of clothing, not even her school books. It was as if the earth had swallowed her whole. Detectives re-interviewed everyone along Tammy's route to school. One neighbor swore they saw her walking just after 8 a.m. Another thought they saw a suspicious vehicle, a dark car, parked near the corner, engine idling. A third claimed they noticed a man loitering days earlier, watching children, but none of the reports lined up perfectly. Nothing was concrete. For investigators, it was like trying to piece together a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Back at the Belanger home, panic turned to horror. Diane and Norman called relatives, searched the neighborhood themselves, and prayed Tammy would walk back through the front door. But as hours stretched into the evening, hope began to collapse. Imagine the agony. Your child left for school, and within minutes, she vanished forever. For the Belangers, the nightmare had begun. By nightfall, local TV and newspapers had picked up the story. Headlines screamed, 8-year-old girl missing in Exeter. Community mobilizes in search for Tammy Belanger. Cameras captured the image of Tammy, a sweet, smiling 8-year-old girl with brown hair, and plastered it across every television set and front page in New Hampshire. This wasn't just Exeter's problem anymore. It was becoming a statewide tragedy. That first night, police, volunteers, and neighbors continued to search by flashlight. Dogs were run along trails into the woods, rivers were dragged, and yards were checked again and again. But there was no trace. Diane and Norman sat awake, staring at the door, praying for a knock, a phone call, a miracle. None came. By the morning of November 14th, the case had escalated. The FBI was called in, bringing more manpower and expertise. Roadblocks were set up at exits out of town. Every vehicle was checked. Police expanded the search radius. Miles of woods, highways, rivers, and fields were scoured. Tips poured in, but most were dead ends. Someone thought they saw Tammy in a nearby town. False. Someone claimed a suspicious man was spotted near the school. No evidence. Rumors spread that she had been kidnapped by a passing stranger. But still, nothing. By the second night, Exeter was no longer the quiet New England town it had been. Parents now walked their children to school. Doors stayed locked. People looked suspiciously at neighbors they had known for years. The disappearance of one little girl had cracked the trust of an entire town. For investigators, the painful truth was clear. The longer a child is missing, the less likely they are to be found alive. Every hour that passed without Tammy only deepened the sense of dread. And as the first 48 hours ended, the Belanger family was left with a cruel reality. Tammy was gone, and no one knew where or why. By the third day of Tammy Belanger's disappearance, the search had expanded beyond Exeter. But with no physical evidence, police needed to start looking at people. Someone had to know what happened. Someone had to be responsible. Investigators first looked close to home. Family members were interviewed extensively. No history of trouble. No reason to suspect Diane or Norman. They were devastated parents, not suspects. Neighbors were checked. Anyone who lived along Tammy's route to school was questioned. Some homes searched. Nothing turned up. So detectives turned their focus outward. Experts from the FBI suggested Tammy had likely been abducted by a stranger predator, someone familiar with the area, who knew the school route, and who had the nerve to strike in broad daylight. The boldness of the act suggested this wasn't random. Whoever took Tammy was either desperate, dangerous, or both. Soon, attention turned to Michael Petit, a man with a disturbing criminal record. Petit was a convicted child molester. He had lived in the area around the time Tammy disappeared. He was known for targeting young girls. Years later, law enforcement would publicly name Petit as the prime suspect in Tammy's disappearance. But in 1984, proving his involvement was nearly impossible. Pattern of behavior. Petit had a documented history of abducting and abusing children. Timeline. He was in New Hampshire during the mid-1980s. Opportunity. Tammy's route was predictable. Petit could have watched her for days, waiting for the right moment. Detectives believed he had both motive and means. When questioned, Petit denied any involvement. He admitted to crimes against other children, but insisted he had nothing to do with Tammy. And without physical evidence, no body, no belongings, no witnesses, prosecutors couldn't charge him. It was one of the most frustrating dead ends in the case. Petit wasn't the only theory investigators explored. Suspicious vehicles. Witnesses reported seeing a dark car idling near Tammy's route days before her disappearance. Some thought it was a blue sedan, others a dark van. No vehicle was ever linked. Local drifters. A few transient men were questioned, but none connected directly to Tammy. Random stranger abduction. FBI profilers warned that Tammy could have been taken by a passing predator who left town immediately after. Every theory seemed possible, but none could be proven. In small towns, fear breeds rumors. Some whispered Tammy had been taken by someone the town trusted. Others feared organized crime, or a ring of predators targeting children. But in the absence of answers, rumors only deepened the paranoia. Decades later, investigators still circle back to Michael Petit. Many believe he knows exactly what happened to Tammy, but without a body, without a confession, and without forensic evidence, the case remains unsolved. For Diane and Norman Belanger, the theories brought no comfort. Every new name, every new lead carried a cruel hope. Maybe this time they would find their daughter. But every time the hope ended in silence. Was Tammy taken by a local predator? Someone who watched her daily walk and struck at the perfect moment? Or was she the victim of a stranger passing through Exeter, gone before anyone realized what had happened? Either way, the truth is chilling. Someone snatched an 8-year-old girl off a familiar street in broad daylight and got away with it. When Tammy Belanger disappeared, it wasn't just a family tragedy. It was the day Exeter lost its innocence. For Diane and Norman, every second after November 13, 1984 was torture. They sat by the phone, waiting for news that never came. They drove through neighborhoods, calling their daughter's name, hoping she'd appear from behind a corner. At night, Diane left a light on in the window, a beacon for Tammy, in case she somehow found her way home. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt like a tomb of silence. Exeter had always been proud of its safety. But after Tammy vanished, everything changed. Parents stopped letting children walk to school alone. Neighborhoods formed watch groups, suspicious of strangers. The quiet comfort of small-town New England was replaced with fear. Every child Tammy's age carried her story like a ghost. For years, teachers, parents, and classmates whispered about the little girl who left for school and never came back. At Lincoln Street School, Tammy's desk sat empty. Teachers didn't know what to say. Students stared at the vacant chair, waiting for her to walk in, as if it were all a bad dream. Some kids left flowers or drawings on her desk. Others were too scared to even talk about it. Her absence was a wound that never fully healed. As days turned into weeks, the case made headlines across New England. Where is Tammy Belanger? Search expands for missing Exeter girl. Television stations aired her photo, warning parents across the country that even safe towns were no longer safe. Tammy became another face in the growing crisis of missing children during the 1980s. Tammy's disappearance was part of a chilling pattern across the U.S. Children were vanishing. Adam Walsh in Florida, Johnny Gosch in Iowa, and now Tammy in New Hampshire. The nation was beginning to realize a terrifying truth. No community was immune. No child was completely safe. In Exeter, townspeople gathered for vigils, holding candles and praying for Tammy's return. But each vigil ended the same way: tears, prayers, and no answers. For a family, the agony of waiting was unbearable. For a town, it was haunting. Years after Tammy's disappearance, the trauma still lingered. Parents raised their children differently. Kids were warned not to trust strangers, not to walk alone. Exeter, once a symbol of small-town safety, became a reminder of fragility. And for Diane and Norman Belanger, life was divided into two parts: before Tammy vanished and after Tammy vanished. Hardest part wasn't just losing Tammy. It was the silence. No body to bury, no answers to cling to, no justice to bring peace. Just an 8-year-old girl frozen in time. Her smiling school photo the only thing left behind. In missing person cases, every tip feels like a lifeline. But for the Belanger family and for Exeter police, those lifelines kept snapping, one after another. After Tammy's disappearance hit the news, the police tip line lit up. People claimed to have seen her in neighboring towns. Others swore she matched the description of a girl at a gas station or a diner or walking down a highway. A few callers even insisted Tammy had been taken by a relative and hidden away. Every report brought hope. Every report also brought heartbreak, because none of them were Tammy. One of the strongest early rumors involved a suspicious car. Witnesses reported a dark sedan, seen idling along Court Street near Tammy's walking route. Some described it as a blue car. Others said black. A man inside had been spotted watching children on several occasions. Police tracked down multiple cars, questioned drivers, even impounded a few vehicles for tests. But every lead fizzled out. The car, like Tammy, seemed to vanish. Another rumor focused on a mystery man, described by locals as someone loitering near Lincoln Street School days before Tammy vanished. Medium build, scruffy beard, out of place clothing, but when police canvassed, no one could agree on what he looked like. Some said tall, others short. Some said young, others middle-age. It was like chasing a ghost. The case became so public that it even attracted psychics who claimed to know where Tammy was. Some insisted her body was buried in the woods. Others said she'd been taken out of state. Police checked a few of the more credible psychic tips, but again, nothing. Even crueler were the prank calls. People phoned in pretending to be kidnappers, demanding money, or taunting the family. For Diane and Norman, each call was torture. While many believed convicted child predator Michael Petit was the answer, others doubted it. Detectives pursued the angle hard, but with no body, no forensics, no witnesses. They couldn't tie him to Tammy with certainty. Some officers grew convinced Petit was guilty. Others thought the real suspect was still out there. This division only slowed the case. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the leads kept shrinking. By the late 1980s, police files on Tammy's case were thick with reports, sightings, and theories. But none brought them closer to the truth. The case grew colder, the rumors louder, and the answers further away. For the Belangers, every new tip brought a cruel cycle. Hope that Tammy might be found. A desperate wait as police investigated. Crushing disappointment when it led nowhere. It's the kind of torment no parent should ever endure. Hope becoming a weapon that breaks you again and again. By the 1990s, Tammy Belanger's case was classified as a cold case. Theories remained. Suspects were named, but nothing was proven. And the biggest question still haunted everyone. If an 8-year-old girl could vanish in broad daylight, in a small town like Exeter, then who among them was capable of making her disappear? Tammy Belanger's disappearance wasn't just Exeter's tragedy. It was part of a much larger, darker story. The epidemic of missing children in 1980s America. In the early 1980s, America began to realize a horrifying truth. Children were vanishing at alarming rates. It started with Adam Walsh. In 1981, the 6-year-old abducted from a Florida mall. Then came Johnny Gosch in Iowa, snatched while delivering newspapers in 1982, followed by Eugene Martin, Mark Allen, and countless others. And now, in 1984, Tammy Belanger, an 8-year-old who simply walked to school and never came back. Each case chipped away at the illusion that children were safe. Tammy's disappearance happened at the height of a new movement. In 1984, companies began printing the faces of missing children on milk cartons. At breakfast tables across America, parents and children stared at haunting black and white photos of kids who never made it home. Tammy could have been one of them. Her photo, her smile, her innocent face, a reminder to every family that danger was no longer distant. Tammy's case terrified parents across New England. If a child could vanish in broad daylight, on a 3-block walk in a quiet town like Exeter, then no place was truly safe. Parents stopped letting children walk alone. Stranger danger campaigns exploded in schools. A generation of children grew up hearing, "Don't talk to strangers. Don't walk alone. Trust no one." Tammy's disappearance became part of that legacy. Tammy was one of thousands of children who vanished in the 1980s. Some were found. Many were not, but her case embodied the deepest fears. A young child, a short, familiar route. Broad daylight. No witnesses, no evidence. She was proof that anyone, anywhere, could be next. The growing number of missing children led to national reforms. The creation of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, in 1984. New laws for child protection, increased awareness campaigns. Tammy's name may not have been as nationally known as Adam Walsh or Johnny Gosch, but her disappearance was part of the wave that changed how America treated missing child cases forever. For the Belanger family, none of these movements, laws, or campaigns brought Tammy back, but her story became one thread in a much larger tapestry. The 1980s missing children crisis that reshaped American parenting, policing, and public fear. Tammy's empty desk, her missing school bag, her smiling school photo, they became symbols of an era when America's innocence was shattered. And, though decades have passed, her disappearance still echoes as one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of that time. As the 1980s turned into the 1990s, the Belanger family hoped that time would bring answers. Instead, time only deepened the silence. Tammy Belanger's disappearance became a cold case, a file in a cabinet, a faded photo on a bulletin board. But for her family and for Exeter, the wound never closed. Throughout the 1990s, police would occasionally revisit the case. New tips surfaced every few years, often from prison informants or locals who claimed to know something. Rumors spread that Tammy had been taken out of state, possibly hidden by someone with a history of child abuse. Some believed she had been buried in the New Hampshire woods, but searches turned up nothing. Each lead ended the same way, nowhere. As technology advanced, so did hope. By the early 2000s, Detectives began looking for opportunities to apply DNA testing to Tammy's case. But there was a devastating truth. There was no physical evidence. No clothing, no body, no crime scene. Without something tangible, science had nothing to test. In the 2010s, investigators circled back to Michael Petit, the convicted predator long suspected in Tammy's disappearance. Petit had a documented history of crimes against children. Some detectives believed he knew exactly what happened to Tammy, but once again, there was no proof, no confession, and Petit, like a shadow, slipped further into history without ever being charged for Tammy's disappearance. For Diane and Norman, the years became decades. Every holiday felt incomplete. Every birthday passed without Tammy at the table. Her empty chair at family dinners was a constant reminder that she was still missing. They prayed for closure, but closure never came. Cold cases are cruel. They leave families in limbo, unable to grieve fully, unable to move forward, unable to ever stop hoping. For the Belangers, every knock on the door brought a question. Is this it? Will this finally be the answer? But the answer never came. Even decades later, Exeter has not forgotten. Old classmates still speak of Tammy, remembering the little girl with brown hair and a shy smile. Retired detectives still mention her case with frustration, calling it one of the most haunting of their careers. Residents of Exeter still shake their heads, remembering the day their safe little town was changed forever. From time to time, the case still sparks hope. Documentaries and true crime shows bring new attention, sometimes inspiring tips. Cold case units occasionally reopen the file, hoping new technology might someday unlock the truth. But as of today, Tammy's case remains unsolved. Nearly 40 years have passed since that November morning in 1984. Tammy Belanger's name still lingers in police files, on missing children databases, and in the hearts of her family. And the question that has haunted Exeter for decades remains unanswered. Where is Tammy Belanger? For nearly 4 decades, one question has haunted Exeter, New Hampshire. What happened to Tammy Belanger? Tammy was just 8 years old. She wasn't old enough to drive, to go on a date, to graduate from school, to fall in love, or to chase her dreams. She was a child with scraped knees and innocent laughter, walking 3 blocks to school on a Tuesday morning. And in the span of a few minutes, she was gone. No screams, no witnesses, no trace. Exeter still carries her absence like a scar. For some, the streets feel colder. For others, the school route looks darker. Every child who grew up in that town after 1984 walked in Tammy's shadow. A reminder that safety could shatter in an instant. Was she taken by a predator who stalked her daily walk? Did a passing stranger snatch her in a window of minutes? Was Michael Petit, the known predator, truly responsible, or was he just another shadow in a story filled with them? Theories swirl, but no answers remain. For Diane and Norman Belanger, the pain has never faded. They grew older, year after year, staring at an empty bedroom, staring at photographs frozen in time they never saw. Their daughter graduate never walked her down the aisle, never heard her laughter as a grown woman. For them, time never moved past November 13th, 1984. Some say Tammy's spirit still walks the streets of Exeter, not as a ghostly apparition, but as a memory carried by the people who loved her, her classmates. Now adults still see her face in yearbooks and wonder what life she could have lived. Her family still feels her presence in every quiet room. Tammy lives on, not in body, but in memory. Her case is more than just a mystery. It's a reflection of a terrifying truth that even in broad daylight, even in safe little towns, children can vanish. And sometimes they are never found. Today, Tammy Belanger would be in her late 40s. She might have had children of her own, a career, a life. Instead, she remains forever 8 years old, a missing child, a haunting photograph, a mystery without an ending. And as long as the truth remains hidden, Tammy Belanger will remain a ghost, not just in Exeter, but in the heart of America's most haunting cold cases.